So in this video we are going to discuss about fundamental rights. So first of all we need to understand that there are different kinds of rights. तो rights बहुत तरह के होते हैं. So fundamental rights जैसे होते हैं, there are other rights also. There are rights which are given under the constitution. They are constitutional rights, though they will not be fundamental rights. So when we talk about fundamental rights, तो आर्टिकल 12 से लेकर के आर्टिकल 35 तक जो पार्ट 3 राइट्स हैं, these are the fundamental rights. So part 3 rights are called fundamental rights. Now these rights are very important rights and we have adopted these rights from the Constitution of USA. एंड इसका बहुत एक इम्पॉर्टेंट प्लेस है इंडियन कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन में. बट वन थिंग वी नीड टू अंडरस्टैंड कि फंडामेंटल राइट्स सिर्फ एक तरह के ही राइट्स नहीं होते हैं. देयर आर डिफरेंट टाइप्स एंड काइंड्स ऑफ राइट्स. सो फंडामेंटल राइट्स विल बी देयर आर कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनल राइट्स. लाइक इवन इन इंडियन कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन यू विल फाइंड कि देयर इज राइट टू प्रॉपर्टी. राइट टू प्रॉपर्टी जो पहले फंडामेंटल राइट्स के अंदर था, बट आफ्टर सर्टेन अमेंडमेंट it became constitutional right. So it is not fundamental right, but it is constitutional right. Similarly, there is right to vote. That is also constitutional rights. So these constitutional rights are there in the Indian Constitution, and then there are in the very Indian Constitution you will find कि part 3 के अंदर 12 से लेकर के 35 आर्टिकल तक जो rights हैं, these rights are called fundamental rights. There are other rights also, like you talk about statutory rights. So you will find कि there are rights given to us काफ़ी सारे statutes में, like CRPC will give you certain rights, CPC will give you certain rights, contract law will give you certain rights. So these rights are also there. These are statutory rights. So I hope this point is very clear that fundamental right एक तरह के rights होते हैं, but और भी तरह के rights होते हैं. Now another important point to understand about fundamental rights, these are justifiable rights. Now what do we mean by this? This simply mean कि it can be enforced in the court. So if fundamental rights are violated, then you can go to the court and you can enforce these rights. So court can enforce these rights. तो ये ऐसे नहीं है कि अगर ये rights violate होंगे तो कोई remedy नहीं है. The remedy is there. You can move to the court and then your grievances can be settled there, and whatever your rights are will be given to you. So this is one important thing. Now there are various rights which are not enforceable. Like if you talk about the concept of DPSP in the Indian Constitution, if you talk about DPSP, Directive Principle of a State Policy, these are not justifiable rights. So even if something is written in DPSP and if a state is not following it, if a state is not doing what is written in the DPSP, then you do not have remedy to go to the court and claim that this should be done, because these are not enforced in the court. But when you talk about fundamental right, then we have to be very clear कि fundamental rights को court के अंदर जा करके enforce कराया जा सकता है. तो कोई भी fundamental right, like take example article 14, 15 or whatever, 21, 20 or anything, you can go to the court and you can get these rights enforced in the court. So this is another important thing. Now another important point to understand about fundamental rights, that there are certain fundamental rights which are available only to the citizens. So there are certain fundamental rights which are available only to the citizens. Like take for example article 15, article 16, article 19(1)(a). So these rights are available only to the citizens. So foreigners cannot claim these rights. So when you talk about foreigners, they can't claim these particular rights. They can't claim it. But then there are certain fundamental rights in the Indian Constitution which are available to foreigners also. Like take for example article 21. This is available both to citizens as well as foreigners. So certain fundamental rights are so important that like they have attained the status of human rights. And whenever any right is given the status of human right, then these rights are available to everyone just because they are human. Then you don't need to even see that whether they are Indians or not, whether they are men, women, or what their age is. Nothing will matter in that case. It will be available to everyone irrespective of any other factors. So that is another important thing which we have to be very clear. Now when you talk about fundamental rights, there are certain fundamental rights which can be suspended if national emergency is imposed. So under the Indian Constitution, under article 352, national emergency can be imposed. There are grounds to do that. like if there is war, or if there is external aggression, or if there is armed rebellion, if there are those grounds, then national emergency can be imposed. If national emergency is imposed, then certain fundamental rights can be suspended, like Article 19 can be suspended in that case. But there are two articles, those two articles cannot be suspended even during the imposition of national emergency, and those two rights are Article 20 and Article 21. So these rights are present, these rights are available even when national emergency is imposed. So that is another important thing. तो इसमें हम लोग इतना समझे कि बहुत तरह के राइट्स होते हैं, कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनल राइट्स, फंडामेंटल राइट्स, स्टैट्यूटरी राइट्स. जैसे कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनल राइट है राइट टू प्रॉपर्टी, कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनल राइट है राइट टू वोट, वैसे ही फिर फंडामेंटल राइट्स कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन के अंदर दिया गया है. आर्टिकल 12 से चालू होता है चैप्टर 3 और आर्टिकल 35 तक जाता है. ये फंडामेंटल राइट्स हैं. लाइक टेक फॉर एग्जांपल आर्टिकल 14 के अंदर राइट टू इक्वालिटी, दैट इज फंडामेंटल राइट. आर्टिकल 15 इज फंडामेंटल राइट. आर्टिकल 16 इज योर फंडामेंटल राइट. आर्टिकल 17 अगेन इज योर फंडामेंटल राइट. सिमिलरली 18, 19, 20, 21 राइट टू लाइफ, ऑल दीज आर फंडामेंटल राइट्स. After that you will see that part 4 rights, in part 4 you talk about DPSP, directive principles of a state policy. So that is different thing. So one thing we have to be very clear कि rights बहुत तरह के होते हैं. Then another thing we have to be clear कि जो fundamental rights हैं इनको कोर्ट में जाकर के you can enforce. There like DPSP can't be enforced in the court, but your fundamental rights can be enforced in the courts. Now fundamental rights in India, we or in any country, if there is concept of fundamental right, they are given very important position, and these are considered very sacrosanct sort of rights. Now certain fundamental rights, another important thing is that certain fundamental rights are available to foreigners also, and there are certain fundamental rights which are available only to the Indian citizen. Like I told you that Article 15 and 16, which Article 16 talks about idea of employment, there should be opportunity of employment, there should be equality in the opportunity. Whenever you talk about employment, initial employment as well as after employment, whatever the issues like salary, promotion, there should be equality. So this is not available to foreigners. Similarly, you talk about Article 19(1) say freedom of speech and expression, that is also not available to foreigners. But then there are certain fundamental rights which we give even to the foreigners, like Article 21. Because when you talk about Article 21, Article 21 is simply that no person shall be deprived of his life and personal liberty except as procedure established by law. It simply means that the person word is used. Now person, when you talk about person, it will include citizens as well as non-citizens also. So that has to be very clear. Now another important thing is that whenever you talk about right, then it is available against someone. तो जब भी हम लोग बात करते हैं कि कोई right है, तो obviously we are talking about right against someone. It cannot be in abstract, it cannot be in vacuum. So when you talk about right, you have to be very clear कि you have this right and who will have the corresponding duty, or like rights will be available against whom. So the traditional idea is that fundamental rights are available against the state. So this is the traditional idea, this is the orthodox traditional idea, that when you talk about fundamental rights, then these are available against the state. Now what do we mean by a state? That we will see in Article 12. In Article 12 we will read that what do we mean by this term state. So there are a lot of discussions that what is state exactly, what do we mean by a state, is judiciary a state or not, will any private body included in the definition of a state or not. So all those things we will have to see when we will read Article 12 where state is defined. But right now we just need to understand that fundamental rights are available against a state. This is the traditional idea, and this is applied even in India, and you see that lot of rights which are there are applied against the state. But then there is new concept, that is like horizontal application of fundamental rights. So when you talk about horizontal application of fundamental rights, what do we mean by this? So you can see that now there are functions which private parties are doing. So there are a lot of functions, there are a lot of duties which is done by the private parties. So a state is not doing each and everything. So there are a lot of things which is done by the private parties. Now what happened in the case of horizontal application of fundamental rights, that fundamental rights are applied even against the private individuals, private entities, private parties. This is the concept of horizontal application of fundamental rights. Even in the Indian Constitution, when we will read those articles, we will see that Article 15 Clause 2, Article 17, these are available against the private parties. So the right which is there under Article 17, abolition of untouchability, or Article 15 Clause 2 also is also about, there are certain ideas there, and like no discrimination can happen even private place पे. So these rights are available even against the private parties. So that is there. Now when you talk about horizontal application of rights, so in India also you will see that constitutional courts like Supreme Court and High Courts, उन्होंने कई सारे फंडामेंटल राइट्स को प्राइवेट पार्टीज के ऊपर भी अप्लाई किया है. लाइक आई विल गिव यू वन एग्जांपल. एक केस में सुप्रीम कोर्ट हेल्ड कि जो एम्प्लॉइज हैं उनका राइट टू हेल्थ जो है वो अवेलेबल है इवन अगेंस्ट द एम्प्लॉयर. So there has to be certain sort of insurance. Similarly, you can see that in another case where certain children were involved in the firecracker industry in Tamil Nadu, in Sivakasi district, their Supreme Court said that this is violation of Article 24, where because you cannot employment of children below 14 years prohibited hai in hazardous factories and industries. So Supreme Court said that this is the clear violation of fundamental rights, and because this is violation of fundamental rights, then those private industries will have to compensate those children. So this you can see that it was applied against the private parties. Similarly, there is landmark case of Visakha versus the state of Rajasthan, where Supreme Court said कि जो prevention of sexual harassment at workplace is very important, and those are private offices, those are private parties, private entities, private individuals, but they will also be bound. So as we can see that now there are instances, there are cases when fundamental rights can be claimed even against the private parties. Like even in the Indian Constitution there is example like Article 15 Clause 2, Article 17, and then there are certain cases like the judgments which are given by the Supreme Court, that is also there, where we can see that there are certain fundamental rights which can be applied even against the private parties, and that can be done, that is possible. Though today also you see that generally the most of the cases you will find they will be again, when you talk about the violation of fundamental right, when you are claiming that your fundamental right is violated and a particular right, like say you are saying that your Article 14 rights are violated, then generally you see that these things are filed against the state today also, and today also this traditional idea which is there is still followed. So it is not that now only fundamental rights are available against the private party, it is not like that. तो आज भी स्टेट के अगेंस्ट फंडामेंटल राइट्स आपके अवेलेबल हैं. अगर फंडामेंटल राइट्स का वायलेशन होता है, इफ स्टेट इज वायलेटिंग योर फंडामेंटल राइट्स, देन यू कैन गो टू द सुप्रीम कोर्ट अंडर आर्टिकल 32 और यू कैन गो टू द हाई कोर्ट अंडर आर्टिकल 226 and writs can be issued. So when we will read article 32, then we will see about particular writs. So there are 5 kinds of writs which can be issued by the Supreme Court as well as High Court. So that is different thing. We will read when we will move to Article 32. But right now we have to be very clear that fundamental rights are available against the state, and in modern times, because that is the need of the hour, that lot of functions are done by these private parties, lot of things are done by the private parties. So today state is not doing all those things. So if you see 100 years before or 200 years before, you will find that most of the things are done by the states. You will see in those times most of the things will be done by the state, but right now you will find that there are various things which a state is not doing directly, and rather corporations, private individuals, they are performing those functions. So it is very important to safeguard our rights against those also, otherwise it will be very difficult, because if lot of things are done by the private parties and individuals, and if you do not have any rights against them, then it will violate your rights, the rights of individual citizens. So that is why, because of this necessity, we find that certain rights certain fundamental rights now are available even against the private parties, that can be done. Now when you talk about fundamental rights, can fundamental rights be waived? Can there be waiver of fundamental rights? So we have to be very clear that waiver of fundamental rights cannot be done. It was held in the case of Basesar Nath versus Commissioner of Income Tax. In that case, Supreme Court clearly held that fundamental rights you cannot waive. So waiver of fundamental rights simply means that you cannot say that you are waiving your fundamental rights. So if fundamental right is present, if fundamental right is given to you, then that is given and you cannot waive it on your own. It's not your discretion to waive these fundamental rights. So this is one important thing which we have to be clear about fundamental right, that can fundamental right be waived, and answer is no. Waiver of fundamental right is not allowed. You cannot waive your fundamental rights which is given to you. So in this topic we understand that, like, we just wanted to understand that what do we mean by fundamental rights. We will study articles in detail, so we will start with article 12 and then we will read all the articles like article 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, all those articles which will come, we will read them. But in this video we just try to understand that what is this idea of fundamental rights. So we need, whenever we are talking about this term fundamental rights, so we have to understand कि fundamental rights then होता क्या है, राइट्स कितने तरह के होते हैं. बिकॉज एज यू कैन सी कि यहाँ पे राइट्स वर्ड है और राइट्स के पहले फंडामेंटल है, तो यानी कुछ और भी तरह के राइट्स होंगे. फंडामेंटल राइट्स के अलावा भी और तरह के राइट्स होंगे. तो इसलिए हम लोगों ने देखा कि क्या राइट्स और भी हो सकते हैं, जिसमें हम लोगों ने देखा कि कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनल राइट्स होते हैं, स्टैट्यूटरी राइट्स होते हैं, जो आपके लीगल राइट्स आपको बहुत से एक्ट्स के थ्रू मिलते हैं, लाइक सीआरपीसी, सीपीसी और भी एक्ट्स हैं. फैमिली लॉ के अंदर है, प्रॉपर्टी लॉ के अंदर है, तो टीपीए के अंदर, ट्रांसफर ऑफ प्रॉपर्टी एक्ट के अंदर आपको राइट्स हैं, कॉन्ट्रैक्ट लॉ के अंदर आपको राइट दिए गए हैं. तो दैट इज देयर. देन वी सॉ के फंडामेंटल राइट्स पार्ट 3 के अंदर कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन के फॉल करता है. हम लोगों ने देखा कि इट इज फ्रॉम आर्टिकल 12 टू आर्टिकल 35 तक फंडामेंटल राइट्स की बात की गई है. देन वी सी कि फंडामेंटल राइट जो हैं वो कैसे कोर्ट के अंदर इन्फोर्स किए जा सकते हैं. ये जो राइट्स हैं इनको आप कोर्ट में जाकर के इन्फोर्स कर सकते हैं. तो अगर आपका फंडामेंटल राइट वायलेट होता है तो आप रिमेडीलेस नहीं है, यू आर नॉट रिमेडीलेस. यू हैव दिस वेरी गुड रेमेडी टू गो टू द कोर्ट, ईदर हाई कोर्ट और सुप्रीम कोर्ट, एंड गेट योर राइट्स इन्फोर्स्ड. देन द नेक्स्ट पॉइंट वी सॉ कि जो फंडामेंटल राइट्स होते हैं, ये बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट क्वेश्चन होता है कि क्या फंडामेंटल राइट्स बस सिटीजन्स को मिलेंगे, क्या ये फॉरेनर्स को मिलेंगे. तो द आंसर इज वेरी क्लियर कि कुछ फंडामेंटल राइट्स सिर्फ सिटीजन्स को मिलते हैं एंड कुछ फंडामेंटल राइट जो हैं फॉरेनर्स कैन ऑल्सो क्लेम दैट. देन वी सॉ कि कुछ फंडामेंटल राइट्स हैं उनको सस्पेंड किया जा सकता है नेशनल इमरजेंसी लगने के टाइम, एंड देयर आर सर्टेन फंडामेंटल राइट्स which cannot be suspended even during the period of national emergency. Then we saw कि general idea क्या है, traditional idea क्या है. जो एक beginning में idea था कि state के against fundamental rights मिलता है. क्यों ऐसा होता है? Because state को बहुत power दिया गया है. State is very powerful entity. तो state के against कुछ safeguard होना चाहिए citizens के पास. अदरवाइज इफ स्टेट के अगेंस्ट आपके पास कोई सेफगार्ड नहीं होगा तो व्हाट विल हैपन इफ स्टेट विल वायलेट योर राइट्स. दैट कैन हैपन दैट इफ इन एनी केस स्टेट इज वायलेटिंग योर राइट, देन व्हाट विल यू डू. सो इट इज वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट कि आपको सेफ गार्ड किया जाए और स्टेट के अगेंस्ट आपके पास कुछ राइट्स हो. इसलिए ट्रेडिशनली ये आइडिया था कि फंडामेंटल राइट्स स्टेट के अगेंस्ट अवेलेबल हैं, बिकॉज इन अर्लियर टाइम्स यू विल सी कि मोस्ट ऑफ द फंक्शंस वर डन बाय द स्टेट ओनली. तो इसलिए स्टेट पावरफुल था, स्टेट वाज ऑल पावरफुल, एंड दैट इज द रीजन कि यू सी कि ट्रेडिशनल आइडिया यही था कि फंडामेंटल राइट जो होंगे वो स्टेट के अगेंस्ट अवेलेबल होंगे. बट दैट इज नॉट ट्रू एनी मोर. Today in any country you go, in each and every country you will find like there are certain countries where a state is controlling everything. There are exceptions, but more or less you will find those liberal democracies, the capitalist economy जहाँ पे है, वहाँ पे बहुत से functions जो हैं वो private individuals, corporations and parties करते हैं. तो इसलिए ये आइडिया ऑफ हॉरिजॉन्टल एप्लीकेशन ऑफ राइट्स आया है. ये बहुत सी कंट्रीज के अंदर पॉपुलर हुआ है और इवन इन इंडिया आवर कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनल कोर्ट, सुप्रीम कोर्ट ने अप्लाई किया है हॉरिजॉन्टल एप्लीकेशन. ये डायरेक्टली भी हो सकता है और इनडायरेक्टली भी हो सकता है. इसके अंदर थोड़ा डिस्टिंक्शन है, बट वी नीड नॉट लाइक टू गो इन डिटेल्स अबाउट दैट. वी जस्ट नीड टू नो कि हॉरिजॉन्टल एप्लीकेशन ऑफ राइट्स में प्राइवेट पार्टीज के अगेंस्ट भी अप्लाई किया जा सकता है फंडामेंटल राइट्स. और ये हमारे कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन के अंदर इसका आइडिया है आर्टिकल 15 क्लॉज 2 में, आर्टिकल 17 में और कुछ जजमेंट्स में, लाइक एमसी मेहता वर्सेस जो भी हम लोगों ने तमिलनाडु वाला केस देखा. सिमिलरली जो एक हम लोगों ने हेल्थ से रिलेटेड केस देखा. सेक्सुअल हरासमेंट, जो प्रिवेंशन ऑफ सेक्सुअल हरासमेंट एट वर्क प्लेस का आइडिया है विशाखा वर्सेस स्टेट ऑफ राजस्थान में, उसमें हम लोगों ने देखा। तो दिस आर द एग्जांपल्स वेयर यू सी कि कैसे प्राइवेट पार्टीज के अगेंस्ट भी अप्लाई किया जा रहा है राइट्स को। नाउ यू सी लास्ट इंपॉर्टेंट थिंग विच वी नीड टू अंडरस्टैंड इन दिस पर्टिकुलर थिंग विच वी सॉ कि क्या वेव कर सकते हैं फंडामेंटल राइट्स को, एंड आंसर इज नो, वी कैन नॉट वेव द फंडामेंटल राइट्स। सो आफ्टर दिस व्हाट वी विल डू कि वी विल अंडरस्टैंड इन द नेक्स्ट वीडियो कि व्हाट डू वी मीन बाय दिस टर्म स्टेट। ये आर्टिकल 12 के अंदर हम लोग देखेंगे कि स्टेट का मतलब क्या होता है, स्टेट कौन है, स्टेट का क्या मतलब होता है, स्टेट कैसे कोई है, इसको डिसाइड कैसे करेंगे, इसके क्राइटेरियाज क्या है, ऑल दिस पॉइंट्स वी विल सी व्हेन वी विल रीड आर्टिकल 12। आफ्टर दैट देन अगेन वी विल रीड subsequent जो भी आर्टिकल्स आएगा like article 13 and all. So we will end this video with this and then we will continue in the next video.